Let's start with introductions. Our body has changed a little bit with some new faces, and welcome. Start here.
Mike Lester, Ward 2.
Randy Housington, Ward 1.
Scott Spencer, 3rd Ward.
Mackenzie Joe, 4th Ward.
Eric Spicer, 4th Ward.
Our staff, please.
Ryan Molman, City Attorney. Quentin Smith, Director of Planning Protective Services.
Molly Bryan, Public Information Coordinator. Rachel Senzi, Neighborhood Services Supervisor.
Dave Helmick, Housing Property Supervisor.
Eugene Huslug, Public Works Admin.
Matt Brash, Public Works Director.
Eric Seaman, Wastewater Division.
David Bangy, City Engineer.
Jerry Stegman, Jeff Tran.
I understand. Well, welcome. First item of business is the approval of the April 11, 2024 committee meeting minutes.
So moved.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Okay, the approval of the April 15, 2024 committee meeting minutes, excuse me.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. All right. Move to item 3, citizens' opportunity to address council committee on stormwater or other public works issues. I think we do have quite a few signed up.
Nobody has signed up with me.
Oh, okay, I thought. All right. Does anybody wish to speak this morning?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Randy Wright here, please.
Yes. Right.
Randy Wright, 1800 Northwood Drive. Just wanted to get an update from the last meeting and the neighborhood improvement program petition that was submitted. If I could just get a staff update at today's meeting.
Yeah, I apologize. We had hoped to get that on this agenda, but we just didn't. We had several people out sick and just weren't able to get it reviewed, but we'll have it for the next time.
Staff.
Maybe on next time.
Next agenda item, next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Please just state your name.
Donna Dietz, and I live at 720 East High Street. Basically, I'm here kind of as a representative of the Historic Preservation Commission. You know, we addressed the Capitol Avenue RFP at a special meeting last week and got some direction from Ryan as far as how to reword some pieces of that, including having the HPC do the review of the proposals that come in order to evaluate them rather than writing into the RFP the actual evaluation criteria and that kind of thing. So if there's questions about it, I'm here to do that.
Anyone have any questions on this? Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak this morning? All right. Moving on to new business. We're going to have a little change in the agenda. We're going to push item F, the River Market Plan, to the first item of new business this morning. So.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian. I was going to say we also have Bob Gilbert here, whose company's working on the plan, and he'll be answering questions if you have.
Yeah, so I'll introduce this a little bit, and then Bob can talk a little bit about the design work. So a few months ago, we've been working with Office of Administration on the MSP project, and currently we have 2 agreements that are really a challenge for us as we move forward with development at that site. One of them is a grant agreement that we have a little over $2 million to utilize at this site, and it has a couple deadlines on it. And then we also have an agreement with OA that has what they call a reentry clause, which allows them to go back on the property if we don't have anything accomplished on that site as far as public infrastructure or some type of business there. So what we did was we looked at some internal uses we might have. We didn't have any really for our departments at that site. Then we looked at something that might be a benefit to the community. So we started looking at what we're calling kind of a river market concept, which is a outdoor entertainment type venue that's able to be utilized along that riverfront. So we started to engage Bartlett West, who's done some design work for us on other things, and asked them if they could help us with this property to try to find a project that can utilize the grant money, and also a project that can remove the reentry of Office of Administration back onto the city-owned property, so we can retain a majority of it for redevelopment and hopefully some new opportunities on the other part of that lower yard. So this is the concept that we came up with. Bob Gilbert from Bartlett West is here to just talk a little bit about the site and kind of what they've created. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any before us, or Matt could.
And the end result is kind of, we would like to, you need to modify your grant agreement, so you need a council action. So this will pop up at a council meeting.
Yeah, so we're wanting to move this forward so we can modify that grant agreement to fund the river market concept.
When would that try to be on the council? Future
Hopefully next meeting, yeah.
How much is this grant? Is it a matching grant or is it?
Yes, yeah. It's about 2.1 million. Rachel's here. I can go over the numbers if you want them, but it's about $2.1 million grant, and it's 50-50, I believe, yeah. And so a majority of those funds that we're using as match are what we call non-ARPA funds, and then sales tax funds, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, does this come from general revenue?
No, one was a grant from the federal government. The other is capital improvement and sales tax. Yeah. Bob, you want to just kind of go over the site here? Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Good morning. Bob Gilbert with Bartlett West. Again, we've been working on some concepts and cost estimates.
If you want to, they're closer ups in there. If you want.
Great.
Bob doesn't know really what's on the slide yet.
There we go.
He's going to weigh in. It's a surprise for everybody.
Okay, is that top thing a
It's the pointer, yeah. And then if you hit the button in the middle, you should be able to advance the slides.
Okay. All right, so there's not really a pointer. All right, so what you have in your packet, I believe, and what's on the screen is just the concepts. You know, given that that there is a timeline on this and then a grant amount, what we try to do is basically look at what kind of concepts could be developed at that site that are useful, but also we've actually pared this down a bit to get it to fit into a cost estimate that's viable. So what you see here is really kind of a public outdoor venue. It's essentially, you know, an open air pavilion with a restroom nearby on the site with kind of a plaza in between. The idea here is, you know, the picture that you see on the screen shows Chestnut Street as the cul-de-sac. Of course, that's been kind of on the horizon for some time. But as Chestnut would develop on the east side of that, or southeast side, you see a big parking lot there. That's actually the state's future building as well. Lewis and Clark's, you know, building with the DNR staff are also very nearby and would be available to kind of hook up through a bike ped facility that you see on the kind of top of the screen. By the way, the top of the screen essentially is the river and the railroad there, where it's just past the cul-de-sac. So the concept here is an open air pavilion, restroom, and plaza facility that could be used for things like an open air farmer's market. It could be also, if you look at some of the images, we have some kind of large trucks on the little loop road that are there. The idea being that you know, food trucks could eventually be used on this site, and with all the state employment within walking distance currently as well as in the near future, that becomes a pretty viable opportunity on the site. And so again, we're just looking at ways to help utilize those funds that are available at a particular site on the north end of the kind of city portion, I'll call it, of the MSP. There's obviously a little bit of a parking lot there as well to help with proposed visitors. at the site and some green space. Again, not knowing exactly what the future development might be to the south, just allows some connectivity to develop over time. The trail, the cost estimate includes what you see on the screen except for Chestnut. Chestnut is actually a separate budget item, so that Chestnut construction is not included. But basically the site development, the open air pavilion, and then the trail that you see in some of these images going up to Lafayette is also included in the cost estimate. So again, as I click through these, just kind of giving you some visuals of what that site could be. You might notice some of the kind of towers that are left. Some of that, of course, the existing prison wall and towers are still there today. So still a lot of kind of negotiating there as far as what elements might be preserved. But obviously the wall along Chestnut would have to be removed to create the access that you see in this plan. I'll keep kind of going. This is looking back to the south, more or less from the river or the railroad. Some of the ideas, possibly using some of the prison wall stone as some seating, for instance. There'd be some neat opportunities that we have here. And this perspective is kind of looking, you can obviously see the railroad and the river on the right. This is looking back up into the MSP site to see some of the relief that's there. Off in the distance is some real challenges we're going to have to deal with to try to get our trail up to the Lafayette cul-de-sac elevation. That is up pretty high. And then again, some images of what this might look like. We actually also have been investigating some prefab building options. Here's just kind of a paper image if you want to look at me here. I've got a few things we've been looking into, just getting some pricing so that we were trying to verify again what that $2 million grant budget might look like and might be able to afford. But anyway, this is just the overall view of the entire site. Obviously, there's a lot of room left to the south after this kind of concept could be developed. Again, I want to keep this brief, but basically then developing an estimate from what that concept looked like. And we did have to pare this down a little bit with some of the size of the parking. Originally, we would love to have had a couple of open air pavilions on the site, but again, just trying to fit this within the initial budget. We have pared that down to hit that $2.08 million number. Maybe stop there and see if there are any questions. Again, I think the idea here is the next steps would be going to the state and starting to have discussions about revising the grant agreement and the plan for the site.
How many acres is it?
I don't have it off the top of my head. You're talking about the actual development part of it?
Yeah.
I can get back to you real quick on it, but I don't know that number off the top of my head.
The total site's 17, and I don't know how much just the river market side is, but we think we're gonna have roughly about 10 acres.
3,
4, 2 to 3.
I was going to guess around 3, but I didn't have that number in my head.
Great concept.
Lester.
It's part of the trail goes, it looks like through state property up to Lewis and Clark and connected to the trail up there, which is great. So I guess they're committed to that part of it.
That's a good question. Maybe our city staff can help me with that, but I know that the concept is from the state side is that they want to connect, the trails in the Lewis and Clark building area. Of course, Riverside Park is just to the east of that, or Ellis Porter, I'm not sure what we call it today, but the idea is that has been a planned, I'll call it commitment, but I don't know about actual dates or dollars. Anybody else have any?
We're meeting with NAR in the coming weeks. They do like the idea of it being connected, so it's just a matter of working it out.
Yeah, that would connect it all the way up to Riverside and beyond.
Yeah.
I guess how comfortable you are that this plan is within the $2 million budget?
That's why I'm pretty comfortable. We do have a contingency on that estimate if you want to look at it. I believe that contingency amounts in the 15% range. So I'd say at this concept stage, that feels pretty comfortable. Again, the largest cost on that estimate actually is this kind of pavilion. And again, we have a quote that fits in that budget right now. So I feel pretty confident.
Size of that pavilion, you have an idea?
It's listed on the drawings. I think it's 50 by 75. This particular, these are prefab a lot of times to be more affordable. So this particular one that I have an estimate on was, I think it was 45 by 72. It's in that range. I'll call it 40 by 70, 40 by 80, 50 by 70, something like that, depending on the manufacturer.
Would this become under the purview of parks once it's built?
I think so, yeah. I think that's been the plan, right? Yeah. And the Parks Director has been a part of some of the meetings as we've discussed the concepts here in the recent weeks.
Did I also understand that if we can get this going, might use some creative, almost like a similar design build or something to make sure we hit that budget? Is that what's been talked about?
We certainly can, however you guys would like to go ahead with, the next steps. Again,
like we did on our wastewater, where we were locking in prices, and Bob's been good about already finding some people to lock those in. And so that seems like a good avenue if we have to go to next stage.
It's especially advantageous when the schedule is a driver, and this one does have a schedule.
A lot of things are different about this is the point, I think.
Chestnut Street is still kind of a little bit of an unknown as far as some of the elevation challenges. So, how soon can we kind of firm that up?
Well, the state has indicated that it's their desire that the Chestnut Street elevation does come up. So their driveway, you can kind of see it, this drive going off to the existing health lab. You can see the health lab building kind of in the lower quadrant on the right-hand side. So the road at that point would be about the elevation that it is currently, but as you go towards the river, the road would gradually begin to come out of the ground, such that by the time that you reached just before the cul-de-sac bulb, where their other driveway is going off towards their parking lot and up to Lewis and Clark, that the elevation of the road there would be about 5 feet higher than what it is currently. So that basically what they're trying to do is lower the grades that they're looking at as they try to go towards their parking lot and ultimately to the Lewis and Clark building. Those grades are somewhere, in the neighborhood of 12, 13%, and so I guess every little bit helps. It doesn't change the overall grade all that much, but it does lessen it in some regards if that road does get graded. So the state has indicated to us that that is really what they want to happen. And so as that affects our side, in some ways it does have some bit of negative impact on our side, because if the road were to stay at the elevation that it is currently, the grades on, from one side of the wall to the other, would all kind of match up, really well. If the road does, and it seems as if it is going to be raised 5 feet, we would be somewhere back in this drawing, kind of back by the western side of the pavilion, or the bathrooms, or somewhere before it would actually meet grade again, because that entire lower lot does slope upward as you move to the west. So certainly as we develop this plan, there'd have to be some work that's done to, does the parking lot just stay lower? How does that grade change affect this site? Which it will affect it in some fashion. We just don't know exactly what that is yet.
As far as the, I really like the food truck idea and concept, because I think it's really critical that we have multiple locations to where we can have multiple food trucks at any given area of the city. And so is there any additional infrastructure that's going to be planned for that, like electrical drops or anything like that, or?
Yeah, we think so. We have electrical in the budget, as well as obviously this is close to nearby existing sewer, so the bathrooms actually are, I'll call it plumbed bathrooms, not vault type things that are sometimes in parks, but that is essentially water, sewer, and electric site. Yes. Again, if the budget would allow, we have other ideas of being able to light inside the pavilion. The more, I'll call it, parts of the day that it can be utilized. We're also looking at, we don't have that in the budget yet, but we are trying to find a pavilion that could allow for some roll-up doors to eventually be added. such that then the facility can kind of have a 3-season use versus just being one open air facility and that's all. Again, that's probably a later phase, but things can be added like that try to help its usage be more diverse.
Currently, we have a number of farmers markets, and I know this discussion about a farmers market type venue at Major Field. Just how much engagement have we had with the different current farmers market, including Lincoln, about this and use of this? Because it's as a farmers market.
I think it's a great question. I'm going to have to probably ask for help on that to see if there's any existing conversations, but certainly we want to do that. This is essentially just a concept at this point, and that could be a next step. But maybe
we've met with them quite a few times, so the opportunity's there if any local markets that they bring along.
I want to make sure I understand correctly that by doing this project, which is, looking at the land, kind of a relatively small project, that would help us secure that land stays with the city. That would be a bonus of doing this project.
Yeah, Ryan can talk a little bit about how that re-entry works, but
so essentially what the agreement says is that the city has to make non-infrastructure improvements to the site in order to resolve the right of re-entry. There's a list of primary uses in our 2018 agreement with the state that would be eligible to resolve that right of re-entry, and this fits in not only as a government institution primary use, but also as an entertainment venue primary use. So the way that works is once we build one, that resolves the right of re-entry for the entire site. And that's always been the problem with this is finding the first person in. So what it looks like is that it's between the state and the city. We're going to be the first ones in, show that it's a viable site, and then open up the rest for redevelopment.
Cornhole championships in 26. I think. Sounds good. Any other questions?
So if the committee's interested, if we get just a simple motion to move forward to the council for
Motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Spencer,
Aye.
Randy, Hazelton,
Aye.
Joe. Aye. Lester,
Aye.
Spicer.
thank you, and thank you for accommodating my schedule by moving that up.
I think we got you out at 7:55, so
Thank you so much. 5 minutes.
have a good day. Thank you very much. All right. So we'll go back to the original configuration of the schedule here. Item A would be a change of order for Bartlett and West Holt Summit Meter Station.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So upgrading the Holt Summit's meter and connection was a priority in our bond issue. So I submitted a RFQ out to the public and got no response. Purchasing indicated it would be appropriate that I could try to negotiate to get help from a local firm. So Bartlett and West did agree to provide a quote, and then it's also appropriate to do it as a change order. So if this were approved, it would be a consent agenda item on a future council meeting, and it does include additional assistance for the Westview project, upgrading the sewer mains and phase 1 of the force main for that project. So it's an $86,000 change order.
Any questions regarding Holt Summit Meter Station? Chair would entertain a motion to approve that so that can be brought forward to the full council.
Second.
I'm sorry, who motioned first?
I was just asking for a
I
motion.
move to move forward.
Second it.
Roll call vote on that, please.
Pleasanton.
Aye.
Job.
Aye.
Lester.
Aye.
Spicer.
Aye.
Spencer.
Aye. Next item is Jackson Street Housing Authority parking lot acquisition. Mr. Molman.
Thank you. So, as part of the phase one of the Capitol Avenue acquisitions by the Housing Authority back in 2018, I believe, this property was acquired by the Housing Authority along with many other properties owned by Mrs. Busher. Yeah, and so the left image is kind of a higher image, and the right one is kind of a close in. And so this property was purchased by the Housing Authority through the eminent domain process and held by the Housing Authority, never really offered for redevelopment with the rest of the properties. And so that's been about 5 years ago or so. And for whatever reason, whatever plans or thoughts that the Housing Authority may have had for that site, they really just don't see it, and essentially have engaged the city to see if the city would be interested in taking ownership and then using it as part of the overall Capitol Avenue redevelopment process. And so generally we'd be talking about a transfer more in line with the properties up on Capitol Avenue, which were purchased by the city back in 2022, and where the city purchased them for a nominal price, but included some assurances that it would be included within the rest of the redevelopment of the Capitol Avenue area. And so the thought would be that we would acquire those on a similar basis. There would be a cost that goes along with that to the city. So back in 2017, the city entered into a blight removal funding agreement with the Housing Authority as a mechanism that described the relationship between the Housing Authority and the city in their acquisitions of the property up on Capitol Avenue. And so the terms of that agreement provide that Housing Authority would use their own funds to acquire the property, and then once sold, the city would backstop the difference between their cost of acquisition and what they were able to sell it for. And so, assuming a $0 purchase price, that amount is in the range of about $65,000. That's how much the Housing Authority has in on the property. And so if they were to sell it to us for a nominal price, we wouldn't be buying it for $65,000. The $65,000 would be our reimbursement obligation. And so that exists regardless if the city purchases it or they sell it to someone else. We're going to owe that difference. And so we think it makes a lot of sense for the city to just go ahead and acquire the property and either make it available, as part of the RFP process, or convert it into public parking and kind of make sure that any uses over there can access that for parking uses, and make sure that nothing over there is in a parking deficit. I think there's some flexibility that can go along with that, but ultimately we're going to end up paying for this property one way or another. And so we think it probably makes the most sense for the city to go ahead and acquire it and be able to control it and kind of have a say in its future and how it's going to interact with the rest of the redevelopment of Capitol Avenue. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I would agree. I think it would be in the best interest of the city to purchasing that property. I would like to see us explore it being a part of our parking utility though, and see what that could potentially enhance what we have. So
that makes a lot of sense, and, you know, with parking challenges that are gonna be upcoming with the, you know, the tear down of the parking garage and the rebuilding, of course, that's gonna displace some parking for a bit, and so at least at the short term, I think it makes a ton of sense to kind of add this to our inventory and have some flexibility. But you know, long term, I think keeping it in the utility is a possibility. I think, you know, some other types of uses could be appropriate as well. So,
so as an action item, you'd like this committee to give its blessing to open discussions about purchasing of this property.
Yeah.
I would entertain a motion to.
So moved.
Roll call, please.
Ogleton?
Aye.
Job? Aye. Lester?
Aye.
Spicer?
Aye.
Spencer?
Aye. Next item is the Cole County parking lot request.
And I might have mistitled that slightly, but Grant, do we have a?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, and this really ties, I think, to Ryan's RFP discussion a little bit, but there was 2 lots there. There's actually 2 lots on this one lot. This is right to the west of the Missouri Chamber. Pointer here, but anyway, and it backs up to the alley.
Right.
And so there's actually 2 lots there, and so the question from I got from the city administrator, can we split that off? The county was looking to purchase some property, that's why I actually titled it that way, which doesn't mean that they would purchase this property, but I think modifying the RFP such that somebody could purchase it and put more parking here, we showed a concept that they could, that's how you would do that. And so, yes, it does fit. We leave the front half for development, facing Capitol open. Somebody wanted to put something more substantial there, and kind of keep our street frontage better looking that way as well.
That house is no longer there.
Yeah, none of that is there. It's just vacant at this point. We have some leased parking along the alley that is the chamber is leasing currently. Missouri Chamber, you've got 2 chambers in close proximity. So anyway, I think that from Ryan's standpoint, just modifies the RFP. The county has talked about it with us briefly, but they could get in the RFP as well, right?
Yeah, there's been quite a bit of discussion. I've talked to a few council members that have asked about this property. And originally we were just going to send out the RFP and let all proposals come back for what the best use is for that. We heard from a few in the community about some of the challenges of parking in that area. It does adjoin a parking lot we already operate. So the thought was if we looked at some initial designs of using the whole area for a parking lot. This concept's more of how can we put some parking there, whether it's private or public, and maintain the street frontage for having potential home or business or mixed-use development there as well. So this is just a concept we wanted to show you. If you want us to change the way the RFP is now, we could do that, but our initial thought was send it out with the whole area just to make sure we see everybody's ideas. And one of the proposals might be the county says, give us this or we'll buy this and put a parking lot there. We could do it ourselves. We're in the parking business, so we could do it as well. So there's a lot of questions here, but this is just one concept of how we could get, was it roughly 50?
I think it says there, I think it's 30.
30 something?
I want to say it's around 30.
Yeah. So 30 plus the adjoining chamber lot, that would be a way to keep some parking there, but also keep that Capitol Avenue street front with structures on it.
There's a lot of grading yet would be done here. This lot sets real high, so we would anticipate it would have to come down.
So does the city not own this right now?
We do.
So what's the request to purchase?
That, I labeled that when I put that on there. It was really.
The county is very interested.
Very interested, but it's in the RFP already.
So in doing this, would we have to split the lot in two?
There's actually 2 lots there, I believe, already.
Yeah, but they don't match up with the way this is split, so yeah, we would have to do some changing.
Boundary adjustment.
Yeah.
Actually, Ms. Joe, there's 3 lots, so it's 414, and then 415 and 16 split that building up there at top, and then go all the way from Capitol to the alleyway.
Yeah. So yeah, we would have to do some modifications to the lines.
Yeah. And this actually ties into some staff suggested modifications to the RFP, and so I was going to get into this later, but I can certainly address this portion. One of the things that staff thinks is a good idea is to just kind of identify some of the challenges with the property lines over there. So those are very obsolescent type subdivisions, very typical of 1800s subdividing, where you have these long skinny lots, and really don't see a whole of that in modern development. So that could be a challenge a lot of the time. So no one really wants to build a 25, 30 foot wide building anymore. And so there was a suggestion by staff to add into the RFP some specific language about, take a look when you are submitting and building a response to the RFP, make sure you're looking at property lines and that appropriate access can be had. And then also adding specific language saying that the city reserves the right to not award properties along property lines, and that the city may divide or combine properties with the goal of facilitating full development of all lots and not leaving orphan lots without redevelopment plans. I think that recommendation ties into this pretty greatly, where just making it very clear to the bidding public that reconfiguration of lot lines is probable, and so responses should be built and can be built with not necessarily along property lines. And I think this is a good indication there that this is a situation where someone could put a bid in to put a property or put an improvement along Capitol Avenue, and then says, well, I guess I'll put parking in the back, or whatever. Well, this would be a situation where we would say, no, we'll sell you the front, we'll sell you the stuff up front on Capitol Avenue, but we're going to split the lot, reserve this other space for parking, whether that be for general rental or for the county or whatever uses we think is a combination. And so I think that ties into with this online recommended language put in the RFP. And I think still having the flexibility of saying we're just going to put everything out for the RFP, we'll see what comes in, and then we'll do the matchmaking and the puzzle piece fitting when we know what everyone's best ideas are, and then we can accommodate based on what's best for the neighborhood.
Any questions?
No, I just comment that I know there's a big demand for parking in this area, library and county and chamber. And, this location right off the alley is ideal also, I think, for parking. And so I certainly think the city would, I think the best use maybe for the city is to retain it for parking.
Yeah, because we're going to have a pretty robust logistic plan for parking once we start that development on the new parking garage and whatever enhancements to that parking garage facility with the conference center, obviously, and the hotel. So there's going to be a lot of pain through progress, and I think we got to have a pretty aggressive parking plan to accommodate that parking deficit in the near future. So
Yeah, but we also want to be careful we're not turning half the city into a parking lot either.
I think this was just informational at this time. Just wanted to let you know.
So we don't need to make a decision today, or, because that's was my next question is, are we being asked if we want to retain this parking lot or not, or?
No, I think it's what Ryan said, demonstrating that you can have the front half of that lot, not have the. I suppose if someone were to come in and have a really great plan, you would have the flexibility to say, well, okay, shelve that. I know we can do it, but it's better. So.
All right, next item is the flooding update. Mr. Smith.
Yes, sorry we didn't get anything into your packet, but this is intended to just be an informational thing. As the committee is probably more than aware, in the month of April it provided us with an abundance of rain. And so we wanted to kind of just walk through some of the things associated with flooding. Now, there's two types of flooding. There's flash flooding, which might be localized to a single street, a single neighborhood, or the entire city. And then there's, of course, river flooding. So we're going to talk more as an informational thing about both of those. First off, we've been putting together what we're calling a dot map. But basically, when our stormwater engineer, Don Fontana, receives concerns from citizens or information, or it comes to our street department, we try to track those locations. So on the screen is something from the April 1st event. You see the dots, the lighter colored dots where, there's a clogged inlet or there was, a clogged pipe or something like that. The solid colored dots were reports of us where a structure, whether it be a house, an outbuilding, et cetera, we found out that they experience flooding into actually a structure. So as you can see, they are all over town, but the bulk was up in the northwest quadrant of Jefferson City. We unfortunately don't have any good gauge data that we've been able to identify yet that was in that area. But I personally lived there. I can tell you it was a lot of rain that came in very, very quickly. So one of the things that we also want to talk about is, we do have aging infrastructure that was designed before some of these higher volume rains, or I shouldn't say, they certainly occurred, but they didn't keep that in mind, these higher volume rainstorms. If some of this infrastructure had been built today, it obviously wouldn't be built the same way. But what we encourage everyone to understand is that the storm system might only be what we would call a 10-year or 25-year design. We've been trying to go away from using the year, so that's really a 10% chance that it's going to be exceeded, or 25, whatever the math works out to be for that. But obviously, it's a pretty often that those things are going to happen, and so those higher storms, the ones that would typically called a 100-year or even higher. We need to route the water overland in some path, have an overland path that allows that water to continue on down toward the river without causing impact. And obviously, we have some issues where that may not have occurred. We had another event on April 28th, not nearly as widespread as the April 1st event. We did have reports of a couple of structures, but you can see that they were more scattered throughout town, maybe not quite as localized as the April 1st event. And we've had other events as well. We're just putting these up here as an example, and we're going to try to start tracking these more in our GIS system so that we can provide some of this historical data. One thing that we've talked to residents about often, and it's not an easy conversation to have, is things that they can do to improve their particular situation. On the screen is a resident who took some of that advice and made some serious improvements to his home. In the upper right-hand corner is as it existed prior to 2000, or 2020, excuse me. And it's kind of hard to see from this perspective, but they're at the bottom of a pretty steep hill, and then they have a downhill driveway that's right, the water comes right down the hill and heads right toward that driveway is the way it was originally designed. This house received flooding quite often. And we talked to them several times about the possibility of closing up that garage and, flood-proofing the house in such a way to protect themselves. The homeowner actually did that, took our advice, and, as you see in the lower right, they closed up the garage that was on the left and raised the grade so it drains back out toward the street. And then they added a garage onto the other side of their lot in this case. The garage isn't now at the basement level, it's at a higher level, more like a split level house. But now, from what we understand, they've not experienced an issue with flooding after making those improvements. Obviously, this is something that would be a significant investment into your home, but I believe there's significant value that came along with it as well. So we talk to folks about it, and often they think something else needs to happen so that the water doesn't get to their property. And the reality is, even if we had the best infrastructure in the world, every pipe can clog, every inlet can clog, and so you have to have a overland flow path that protects yourself from those events. So with that, kind of.
And I wanted Britt to highlight this property. It's over off Boonville area, we'll say that. But this person, we've studied this area, and there's a pipe that actually goes under the driveway, a pretty large pipe, and so often when we find these structures that flood, they're very similar to this. Is they have very flat driveways to the street. There's just no overland flow that can happen without flooding them, and so. It's kind of a personal choice, obviously. How do you want to protect that? We're working with another gentleman right now. He understands the concept, but he's going to modify the doors in a way that they can withstand floodwater. It's his goal, and that's viable as well. So we kind of work with our floodplain code, if you will, through Don Fontana. He issues those permits. These are unofficial. These aren't mandatory like you see on federally regulated floodplains. That's a whole other animal, but it's the same concept. And so we often have people, you'll hear about people, oh, well, that's not going to flood even though I'm in the floodplain. Well, maybe not, maybe will. And so that's why when you're in the regulated floodplain, you start seeing things like this having to occur if you're going to modify a structure once you hit certain limits and things. So we just thought we'd highlight this gentleman's home. And I think he's pretty happy after the last big flood because he was right in the middle of that general area. He probably would have been flooded again. And I think his comment last time he was here in was it 16 or 19, whenever it was, his house had flooded 6 or 7 times since he'd lived there. And he'd lived there a long while. So anyway, and then do you have any more?
Yeah. Then talking about river flooding, they often get mashed together. But they are very much two different animals. Took these 2 screenshots actually just this morning. The upper right is the Missouri River flood gauge, and the lower left is the Morrow. As you can see, we're heading back toward the action stage on the Missouri River, and we're already in what they call my eyes aren't seeing that today. The orange level there,
Minor flooding levels.
Yes, but we know at different gauge levels, we know what infrastructure is going to be affected around town. And this time of year, we're often on our phones looking at these gauges to see things are changing. But a few years ago, after a high water event in the first year, it was 2008, I guess it was, we as staff started putting together what we called our flood action plan. And I have a copy of it, hard copy of it here with us, but just to give you an example on the screen, what you can see that it's been revised just about at every high water event we have. In fact, we haven't published the revision that we're going to be doing, and I'll have a 24 on there soon when we add some issues with the new Adrian's Island. We took the opportunity the last high water event to go take some shots down on Adrian's Island at some of the critical infrastructure there, the entrance road that comes in off of Chestnut, et cetera. So we have some more data as to what gauge level is going to affect that infrastructure as well. So we're going to need to add that to this action plan. But, it tells us, we have two kind of minor flooding events we classify as 30 feet or less on the Missouri River gauge, and then major, which is above 30. And that 30 is based on the levee across the river. The levee across the river provides protection to about the flood stage of 30. So this tells staff, if Matt and I are hit by a bus tomorrow, as long as Jerry's not driving it, it'd be all right. But if we get hit by a bus tomorrow, somebody can come in, not only in Public Works, but it also has, all the other divisions within the city's actions that need to take place at different flood levels. And most recently, the Corps of Engineers has been working on a flood mitigation plan on the lower Missouri River, an off study here in Jefferson City. And as they started gathering data, we provided this information to them, and they, I think more or less taking this as a best management practice for other communities up and down the river. Apparently, we were the only ones that had something that, everybody had a plan, but it's usually up in somebody's head. This one is actually written down so folks know what's going on. With that, be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Good job on your recognition. Can you give us a quick idea of what an overland path, you said that we need to improve that maybe?
Yes. So if, let's say that there's an inlet in the backyard and there's a pipe going between two houses that then goes out to the street and on, across the street and into a creek on the other side. Kind of a common process. What we'd like to see is a very defined channel between those two houses, a low area so that water can then pass between the two houses without going up against the foundation walls. But even if it gets against the foundation walls, hopefully there's no window that's there that it could then impact that window. Those are the kinds of things that we're talking about. So, we, in the engineering world, we say we design for the 10 or 25 year and we route the 100 year is the way our actually stormwater code actually states. So, things that are being built today in new infrastructure, hopefully that's not a problem. But it does rely on the home builder following those recommendations when building the house. And that's not always easy to communicate.
Good. All right. Next item is the yard waste. I think you're up again.
Yes, I know we have a long agenda today. I tried to provide just an informational cost estimates in your packet. Really don't have a lot to say other than it is up and going, and citizens are using it extremely well. Our staff is there every day bringing the pile. We were able to have a contract to process the pile that we received in the late winter, now we're ready to actually put out a proposal to get rid of the waste that we've acquired just in the month that we've essentially been open. So I believe it's operating very well, and it's a great service to our citizens. But obviously, as you can tell, it does take quite a few man hours to actually manage.
I just would like to compliment the spirit of cooperation between the parks and Public Works, something that we haven't had in years past, and with our new parks director and our staff, we worked out a really nice agreement here. I hope that our citizens are still continuing to observe the regulations and
obviously, for the most part, people do. There's occasional things that are out there, but so far none of it has been. The worst has been people bringing their stuff in bags and throwing the bags in the pile. If we
is there signage that says please empty the bags or take it? Okay, so
it does. If people just recognize that we really don't want to put plastic bags in a mulch pile.
So maybe that's another piece that we can communicate out amongst our mediums and platforms that we utilize. Did we do we have cameras installed there, or do we have plans?
Well, there's a sign up that says we do. They're on order. They're on order.
We don't advertise.
And we were talking about geofencing that to get data.
I think Molly might have some information about that.
Yeah, so last time we pulled the data, people aren't there long enough for it to be accurately tracking how many number of visits. The visits that I think the Place Your AI shows doesn't add up with how much material's there, so I don't think it's an accurate data point right now.
But what we did do is take one of our traffic counters, and I wish I had thought to do this at the beginning, but we did take a traffic counter out there and we've installed it on the entrance road. So we're a little old school counting.
It won't give us the unique user data but it'll give us total.
It'll give us total usage, exactly.
Any questions on the guardrails? All right, moving along. We already did the River Market Plan. City County sales tax proposal. Ms. French.
Yeah, and just, we're still working on this. We haven't met with the county. We need to meet with the county again. Just want to give you a flavor of what we have in here. We're refining the numbers a little bit, but we already have a couple agreements in place, but one of them you hear is about CART, and I think Gary Clanworth's still there. They are honing in on the completion of that project, so we'll be needing to modify that agreement to final numbers, and that's kind of one of the things in our plan we're working towards. Obviously, we had the High Street Viaduct grant application out, so we've reserved some funds for that. So we would need to update that a little bit as well. We probably on that project, I know Bob's already left, Bartlett and West is our consultant on that, but we're kind of at the end of our scope on that agreement with Bartlett and West. So it may be that we need to keep progress on that project and modify that agreement here in the next month or so to kind of go to that next phase of design. We're looking at still Monroe Street construction. I think our plan is probably getting very close to being bid out here in the next month or so. That's Monroe Street from the highway to through Dunklin there, replacing that signal as well. And so that's still on the docket. We'll have a firm number pretty soon to put in there, but we estimate it's between $800,000 to $1 million for that project. The Wildwood, of course, is on there. I think we have some meetings getting scheduled with the developer out there shortly. And so kind of honing in on that project as well. And then we've have some monies left over, and we've talked about various things to do with it, but I think they're just kind of trying to follow the sales tax original guidance. And we talked about some stadium projects, and we've had some opportunities to buy some right-of-way for future projects. So that's kind of where we're refocusing our efforts there. Obviously, you got to have the right-of-way before you can do anything. And so we have one willing seller already, so we're kind of looking at that. So that hopefully will have a pool of money for some of those right-of-way acquisitions. And that's kind of a new thing we haven't talked about a lot, but that corridor is obviously one of the busiest corridors in town, and we need to keep up with it. And then, of course, Madison Street, we want to get something in there along the frontage of, say, the hospital down towards Dunklin, at least in that area. That could potentially be an overlay with just some minor sidewalk repair, etc. But having a pool of funds for that. So we're trying to work through those projects. This isn't final by any means yet. I just want to give you a verbal update that it's coming pretty quickly. And so we just need to finalize these numbers, meet with the county again, get everybody on board, and then we'll come back with a final product. That's kind of what we're thinking would be in that product, and go from there. And not only the city county funds of sales tax, but we have some non-ARPA money in there and some grants and things like that we're that supplement. So that's something that's coming. Just want to give you a quick update.
Questions on this? Okay. Next item, something I'm really excited about, the airport user agreement for the 2024 Show Me State Air Show.
Yeah, I'll introduce this, and Penny Smith, who's one of the organizers of the Show Me State Air Show and the hardest working person at the air show, is actually here as well. Just to give you an update, last year we had the first annual Show Me State Air Show at our airport, and it was hugely successful thanks to the efforts of Penny and her team. And they have brought back forward an agreement for the coming year, which would allow for some expansion. But there's also, with expansion, funding is an issue. And so, Penny, I'd turn it over for you from there.
And this would end up as a agreement at the council, so that's part of the reason to be here, is that eventually we'll have to have a final agreement on this air show, and Ryan, I know, has been discussing that as well.
Well, welcome this morning. If you could introduce yourself to those that are not familiar with you.
Thank you. I am Penny Smith. I am the director of the Show Me State Air Show. I appreciate you all seeing me this morning and talking about the air show. I am here to discuss and answer any questions that you have. To give you any background, we're celebrating the 80th anniversary of D-Day. That is this year. This means that we will be recognizing our World War II veterans, and in ways like we're having a veteran dinner for them. And I don't know if we're going to be able to have them attend. We're trying. They're working on it. We also are making an effort to record some video of an interview that we're having with them so that they can talk about their experience before, during, and after the war. And it will be aired on large screens at the air show, so the crowd can understand what they went through and how it affected their lives. So it's a big deal. I really feel very strongly about this. The dates for the air show are the 13th through the 15th. The 13th is the career day, and then the veteran dinner. The 14th, 15th is the actual air show dates. On the 14th, 15th, we'll have, just your regular event type things, food and merch vendors. We're going to have military vehicles, classic car show. We've got a kids area with STEM booths, bounce house activities and games, veteran assistance organizations, military recruiting booths, military and civilian aircraft on display, and some will allow us to climb in, explore, kind of get to learn about them as well. And then also, of course, the aerial demonstrations and performances by both military, warbirds, current, and civilian as well. Part of what we changed in the contract was adding an extra box to the air show. It is unique and the only one in the United States that has 2 aerial performance boxes. What this means is that the aircraft doing their demonstrations will be able to come around. I don't have a map, but they kind of get to wrap around the attendees and get kind of a full experience of them as they're doing their exhibit. And the other thing that the contract change was the gate fee. We're asking for a $5 gate fee, entrance fee to get in. It's for kids 5 and up. And the reason for this is, I hate to do this, but we have the expenses to do an air show. I don't know if you guys have ever been to an air show before other than ours, but these things are very expensive. The cost to get these aircraft in are tens of thousands of dollars. So the budget for this year's air show, which is a small air show, is $150,000. And trying to raise sponsorship money, getting grants, things like this is very difficult. Everybody's got their hand out wanting, and they're all worthy causes, but it's very hard to raise money for these things. So the $5 gate fee will really help moving forward each year to be able to put it toward the next year's show. Just to kind of give you an idea, just one of our aircraft is a $20,000 expense, and that's with fuel, hotels, the cars, their oil, everything it takes, and their fees. So it's a very expensive process to make that happen. This is what it is. Average air shows cost anywhere from $250,000 on up to a couple $1 million. So, if we ever wanted to have the Blue Angels or Thunderbirds, they're $300,000 by themselves. So just gives you kind of an idea of what we're talking about expense-wise. Any questions on any of that?
Do we have an idea of what our EID was for the last event, or economic impact dollars from the previous event? There was a lot of people there for the days I was there. It's an enhancement for our community. It was a great event.
It was estimated between 8,000 to 10,000 were there last year, and it's estimated to double this year because we have included, we're working with Columbia Public Schools, Fulton Public Schools, all the rural public schools for the career days, so it's getting the word out to everybody. So it's definitely doubled. And plus we have the Helldiver coming, and it is the one and only operational World War II bomber of its kind here at our airport. And so we've got groups that are booking hotels now to be here from Kansas City, St. Louis. It's a big deal.
And our tenants at the airport, they're great. They're supportive as well. And
they are awesome. They've been very, very cooperative and eager to be a part of it. It is so awesome to have the support of the city and the airport.
As well as local businesses I know are signed
yes.
up on this as well.
Yes.
We think, excuse me, we think CVB has some impact numbers. We just don't have it on hand.
I was just
gather that up and distribute it.
As an action item, you would like us to give it?
Yeah, we appreciate this, the committee's support in moving this forward. This will show up as a resolution on a future council meeting, but I got that right, Ryan?
Yes.
And maybe that CVB information could be added as part of the packet information as well. Beneficial.
I motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Fulton,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Lester,
Aye.
Spicer,
Aye.
Spencer.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Appreciate you being here this morning. Okay, item 5, old business. Mr. Mulmer with RFPs.
Thank you. So, per the instruction of the City Council, staff sent to the Historic Preservation Commission the draft RFP for their review. The HPC had a special meeting last Friday and came up with essentially two recommended modifications to the RFP. The first one is regarding the zone. Sorry, I'm just trying to pull it up here, make sure. The first one is regarding the zoning, and so the HPC made a recommendation, essentially highlighting that plans submitted should demonstrate compliance with MU1 and overlay district zoning, but leaving in the reference that if necessary, that bidders should identify any changes that may be necessary in order to accomplish the redevelopment plan. And I think the not to speak for the HBC, but at least my interpretation, there's a recognition that compliance with the existing overlay and the M1 zoning regulations is the preference, and bidders should attempt to show as much as possible how they are in compliance with those, but also recognizing that modifications to the zoning may be necessary. And a great way to look at that, I think, is the existing development up there. So the project at 101 Jackson by Transformational Housing, and also the redevelopment of Ivy Terrace. Both of those required modifications to the underlying zoning, both MU1 and the overlay zoning. And so, for example, the Transformational Housing project required a PUD to add a allowed housing unit for that project to work for Transformational Housing. And then the Ivy Terrace project required several modifications to the zoning and also proceeded as a PUD, but most notably a modification that allowed for the event center use. So that wasn't allowed use in the underlying zoning, and so the PUD added that as an allowed use. And so, both of those, recognizing both those projects as being, well within the nature, context of the neighborhood, but still requiring modifications to the zoning. And so, I think that was a nice balance that the HPC made, highlighting the existing zoning and wanting those plans to highlight those compliance as much as possible, but also leaving the flexibility to have modifications if necessary. The second requested modification to the RFP that the HPC forwarded is they think there be some value in the HPC undergoing a review of proposals before they get to the city council with the recommendation. And so I will, I think, smartly leave that to Ms. Dietz to address kind of the thinking of what the HPC is wanting to do on that. But that's also a recommendation that the HPC forwarded on the RFP is that they be included in the RFP review process. I did advise the HPC that review would be be a closed matter for them to review because it deals with real estate negotiation of a real redevelopment agreement, unless otherwise voted by the city council. So that would be the path forward unless modified by the city council. If it were acceptable, that be involved in the review process. So with that, also, as I touched on earlier, there are some additional staff recommendations to changes to the RFP. Specifically, we thought it would be helpful to add language about the possibility of hazardous waste being present at the funeral home. We are not sure that is the case, but given its prior use, we think there is probably a high likelihood that there may be some chemicals and waste that need to be addressed when an eventual purchaser gets in there. We just wanted to be upfront about that so when people are thinking about whether or not they want to bid on this particular piece of property, that is something that they may have to undertake. We assume that will be additional cost, and so when everyone is putting in their plans, I think it's a good idea just to highlight that there may be a worst case scenario where there's some environmental and hazardous type cleanup that needs to be addressed. And then also getting back to the language about the lot lines. So we think some specific language advising potential bidders to study and make themselves aware of the existing property lines, and including a specific reference to the Missouri GIS so they can kind of get the detail of what's going on there. And so when they're looking at lot lines and putting together their plans, that they have a good idea of what's surrounding and what types of property line challenges may need to be addressed. So this would include adding language that respondents may propose purchase of portions of property, adding language that states that respondents would be responsible for negotiating and acquiring any necessary easements from adjacent private property owners. We can't control the private property owners, and so if someone has a plan that requires, that contemplates access through an adjacent private property owner, they need to go talk to those people because we don't have any control over them. And then also specific language that the city reserves the right to not award properties along property lines, and that the city may divide or combine property with the goal of facilitating full development of all lots and not leaving orphan lots unsold without a development plan. We think those are probably just pretty good common sense, but that flexibility to do so is already built in to the RFP, but I think specific highlights saying, this is some kind of not ideal subdivision lot lines up here. And so what we are going to try to do is maximize development of the area and make sure that we're not leaving any pockets that the city would ultimately remain responsible for. We want to get the entire, all 20 lots into private hands, or redevelopment, whatever the case may be. We're not interested in remaining the property owner property owner up there, except for maybe a few, parking type uses or other community utilization type uses. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and of course we have representatives from the HPC here as well.
Questions? All right. Move along to item B, MSP additional brush removal estimate. Mr. Hellman.
So at last month's Public Works and Planning Committee meeting, staff was asked to get an additional estimate to remove the remaining trees that are at the end of Lafayette. These trees are approximately 12 to 14 inches at the base, and then of course taper up from there. I reached out to a few companies, and the best and lowest bid was $3,950. And that would be for removal of all the remaining trees at the end of the cul-de-sac. Anything that's over 9 inches in diameter at chest level would have to go through a review to ensure that it's not protected habitat this time of the year. Anything under 9 inches at chest level can be removed immediately. One thing to keep in mind about this is in the preliminary thoughts for this area, if it does go through with any kind of redevelopment, this whole area will be regraded and all this vegetation will be removed potentially at that time. In the last week, we've had crews up there cutting vines, spraying the steep slopes, and removing some additional small trees. As far as moving forward, if it was something we wanted to do, the trees under 9 inches could be removed immediately, and then anything over 9 inches at chest height would either have to wait until the fall or require a biologist to come out and determine if it's protected habitat.
Is there any advantage just to hold off till fall and do it all at that period of time, just so that we're not having them have to navigate through what they're going to have a review on, and so.
And I think also by that thought process, our demolition crew that's working on the saddle tree is making strides. This week they're removing the old fill pile up at the end of Lafayette from the previous state demolitions. With the saddle tree being gone, it's really opened up the view without removing these trees. And so if we would wait, that would allow time for all the vines to die off, for the spraying, for this work that we've already contracted to be complete, to get kind of an idea of what we're really going to look at once this work's done before moving forward. But
So this has been a project that's been on my radar for quite some time, since I was on the Environmental Quality Commission. And a pretty large number of trees has already been removed, and one of the biggest concerns was opening up a view of the river, which if you drive down there now, you can see it. At that time, the advice was that we retain trees that are a certain diameter, which you have described, and ones that have significant ecological benefit. To my understanding, that was done, so I do not see value in this going in and cutting down these trees, especially whenever there is plan for development, potentially that winding path up the hill. In the spirit of putting my tree hugger nature aside, in the spirit of saving money, I don't see a significant benefit of doing this if it's going to be done later down the road. The other benefit that we have is by retaining those trees on that very steep slope that goes down to the railroad. We ideally, as we've seen with this heavy rain, would avoid a mudslide heading down towards the railroad tracks. So I do not personally see any huge benefit in taking this project on, because you can see the river, we're holding the hillside together. A lot of those black locust trees are gone. By creating shade, we're preventing a massive invasive species problem from popping up. And eventually, it sounds like someone else is going to take care of it anyway. I don't see a huge benefit.
Any other questions, comments?
What would be the benefit to us clearing it?
Well, I think the request previously was just to get a quote to go ahead and clear out the rest of it. I think it was from a viewpoint perspective. So I think that was the driving force behind it. But, as Mr. Helmick said, we've cleared a lot. We're not necessarily proposing that we move ahead with it. We can do that certainly. Might be wise to take the summer and see what the view is and throw in. There's no rush to get it done. Like I said, there's going to be a lot of changes, I think, going in that area, going into the future. Doesn't preclude us from coming back and getting another quote in the future to remove more trees at that point too.
Those trees are already pretty big. It's gonna take time to replace those, and all that time that you take is just time that rain. Is that hill away?
All right. Next item, garage management software.
On that one, we left it on there as old business because we've talked about it a couple times. Still need to work through the final what's going on there, but nothing new to report this meeting, but we'll leave it on there until we get it resolved.
Item D, review and approval of the 2024-2025 Public Works and Planning meeting schedule.
Second.
Roll call now. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Same sign. Approved. All right, we have any reports?
I did hand out the capital improvements project status report. Not a lot has changed since we submitted that last month. Some movement on a couple of the projects in the other category, parking garage rehabilitation, News Tribune demo, East Mill Street Sewer, all kind of had some progress in the last month, but for the most part, these projects remain as they have been. I'd be happy to answer any
questions.
Just for the committee's benefit, the tower project, the air traffic control tower, is out for bid. We had a pre-bid earlier this week. A lot of interest. Bids will be received in the next. I don't think it's next week. It's the week after, and hopefully we'll be moving forward.
Right. Thanks for that update. Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you for your time this morning.